Well, look, Deshaun Watson is in a situation right now where he's made it clear to the organization that he wants out. Nick Caserio, the general manager, is not taking calls from other teams when it comes to a trade. I've spoken to teams that believe he eventually will do that, and probably closer to the draft. The question I have is, how might he possibly lose the leverage that he currently has? Because he has all the leverage in the world. He has an elite quarterback that is one of only one when it comes to the availability on the market. So right now, Houston has the ability to get anything it wants for Deshaun Watson. So what happens if, say, Russell Wilson winds up on the market as well? What happens if this degenerates so badly that Russ says, I want out, I want to trade? Now all of a sudden, the supply and demand curve shifts. The Bears can say, well, look, if you don't accept our offer for this, we'll just go get Russ over here for the same thing. So the question here is the Texans' leverage the best right now that it will ever be? And if you believe it is it not time for them to pull the trigger? And that, to me, is the question that both the Texans should be asking and the Bears should be asking at this point.
Let me ask you this, though, Jeff. At what point, though, will the other teams that are looking for a quarterback decide to go to plan B rather than to sit around and play the hopscotch game with the Houston Texans for Deshaun Watson? When will they move on to plan B?
That's exactly the point. And again, this is all about negotiations, and timing is everything when it comes to getting the best deal possible. So I understand from the Texans' standpoint of saying, hey, we're going to make everybody wait a little longer. We're going to make this thing fester. We're going to get as much as we possibly can for Deshaun Watson. But, it doesn't always take a hard deadline. It doesn't always have to be the day before the draft to get the most in compensation. To exactly your point, if teams decide to go to option B, if they decide to say, you know what, this is just going to drag on too long, we don't have any firm belief that we're going to wind up with Watson, we need to go over here instead. At that point, that's when Houston starts to lose some of its leverage. To that point, I don't really know that there is any other option on the market at this point that even is close to Deshaun Watson. Are we talking about Sam Darnold at this point? Are we talking about Alex Smith? Because most executives don't believe the conversations I've had that Russ will actually spring free and become a trade commodity. Nobody necessarily believes that he is available on the open market just yet. So to all this, Nick Caserio can continue to say, yeah, but what else are they going to do? Again, it's all about finding that tipping point, and maybe we're just not quite there just yet.
Let me ask you this real quick, Jeff. So we know teams need quarterbacks. We know the Chicago Bears need one in the worst way. What's more important to them, though? Getting a quarterback or retaining Allen Robinson? Because if I'm a quarterback and I'm going there without, I'm not going there without a top dog.
Well, that's a good point, Key. And also, when you consider the timing of everything, I don't necessarily think if they tag Allen Robinson that he winds up playing on that tag. He's made pretty clear that he doesn't really love the idea of it, that he wanted to get to a long-term deal last year, wasn't able to do so. So, look, maybe that changes a little bit. And by the way, you can acquire a quarterback, and if he is on the tag at that point, Allen Robinson, if Deshaun Watson comes through the door, might say, you know what, I'll sign that tag, I'll do this year, and then I'll be even bigger commodity next year when I hit the open market. I mean, that's a possibility too. But again, it all comes back to timing, and that's the exact reason why this is going to be such an intriguing month, despite the fact that it should be quite the opposite in the NFL. Instead, we're going to be talking about this one every day.
Jeff, from the Bears' perspective, how much are they willing to give up for Deshaun Watson? Are we talking Khalil Mack?
Well, so they would have to go not only significant compensation, but you would think that they would have to go player. I don't necessarily know that it's Khalil Mack, because if you're tying yourself to Deshaun Watson, you also have to think like you're doing that. You're mortgaging your future based on the fact that you believe you can win now. If you give up Khalil Mack, is that still the conversation that you're having? So, but to your point, when you look at the Jets' compensation that they could potentially provide, that feels like more. I mean, you're talking about a higher pick in the draft that could acquire a franchise quarterback in itself. So the Bears don't have that, but there's a lot of teams right now that covet the idea of future first-round picks as much as they do current ones. There's a lot of team building going on right now that says if we can get a team to give up future draft picks, we're going to be okay. So the Houston Texans, probably one of those teams that feel that way. You know, Nick Caserio is a new GM. He probably feels that way, where as opposed to Ryan Pace, he's probably willing to give up those picks because guess what? If he doesn't get a starting quarterback, he's gone anyway. So what does it mean to him?
Let's go to Seattle and the Seahawks for a second. Russell Wilson speaking out. What kind of pressure has he put internally on the organization to actually fix up that O-line and get what he wants ultimately?
That's what it feels like to me. I mean, it feels like application of pressure. You know, I think when we think about the relationship between Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson, that's where we have to start. Because at some point, these guys are going to sit down and say, all right, you fired your shot, we fired our shot. Let's sit down and try to like cool things off a little bit and see if we can get there. You want a little more protection. You want a little bit more say in personnel. We believe that we as a team have to make those decisions ourselves. Let's see if we can meet in the middle a little bit there. If that can happen, the equivalent of marriage counseling, so be it. You know, Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, they went through a lot of heartache, a lot of frustrations before the was completely dead last year. And I think that they survived because they were able to go through that mediation process. The question is, can Russell and Pete do that, or is their relationship already too far gone? That's the question that we all should be paying attention to in the coming weeks to see whether Russ winds up being happy enough to say, you know what, I'm not going to ask for a trade. Let's run this thing back.
Before we let you get out of here, Jeff, I want you to answer this question for me on our Twitter. Question today is at KJZ is, who would be a great logo replacing the shield in the NFL if that was other than a hypothetical? Who would it be?
Man,
doesn't have to be
that's
this age, obviously.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, you know, like I don't necessarily think like Tom Brady obviously would make the most sense to people, but I don't think that's like the right answer. You know, like is it? You know who, like, for some reason, like I think of like Barry Sanders, and that's not the right answer either. But like I don't know, I could just see that kind of visual of a logo with the dude, you know, holding the football almost in like a slight Heisman variation. I'll say Barry Sanders just for the fun of it.
That's actually been broached this morning by somebody already. You're right. That Sweet Feet would be a really cool logo. We're asking this morning. We're actually going to talk about it here in just a few moments. So if you're on the phone line, ready to give us your view, hang tight. You can hit us on Twitter, KJ